Hello and welcome to episode 1 of HardcoreGaming101.net's new podcast called Top 47,858 Games of All Time, where we will objectively and definitively rank the games you nominate on Twitter. Let's let everybody know who's here.
Yeah, I'm Chatanga.
I'm Carl, and I was hired and fired in the same day.
I'm Bob Nader, new and improved for a hopefully new and improved podcast. Actually, that's a lie. I'm exactly the same.
Don't worry, we'll find completely new ways to suck. So,
yay!
As we get started now, astute listeners will remember that we did something like this way back at the end of episode 35, the Spelunker 2 episode. So we tried it out, and it seemed to work pretty well. So you should listen to that if you want to hear all about how we came to this idea. But for now, I'm just going to give you the 2 going ground rules that we have. Rule number 1, all rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate, completely objective. Number 2, you can nominate games via Twitter, hashtag Top47K. And rule number 3, don't nominate games that have already been suggested. And you'll know if it's been suggested because you can check out our list, bit.ly/47K games. So that's about it. And so the idea is that I put out the Twitter APB, and about a good number of our listeners nominated spates of games. And so we're going to look at the list, and we're going to try to do at least one game from each person. And if we don't get to you this time, don't worry. We won't leave anybody behind. So you'll be in the next one. So the first game we're going to rank today was suggested by, I think this is Jason X, right? Silent Fanatic.
Yes.
Long-time friend of the show and listener, and never been a guest, right?
No, hasn't yet.
He's, I'm friends with him on Steam and Twitter and stuff, so I see his things a lot. He's always quick to respond, so shout out to Jason X. You can follow him on Twitter at Silent Fanatic. Funny guy. So he nominated the game UN Squadron, and he didn't specify the platform, so I just went ahead and chose Super Nintendo because that's kind of the bigger, more sophisticated version of the game, I guess.
Yeah, I could tell you all about the SNES version, but to just glisten over the arcade one quickly, it's very much linear, certainly not as advanced, but it does share some stages and bosses. The SNES one is almost a new game for all intents and purposes, and this game is based on a manga and OVA series known as Area 88.
Yeah, Area 88.
Yep.
Which is why they have this big 80s anime bangs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the epitome of the 80s anime, for better or worse.
It's pronounced epitome. You can say that again.
I wish I could say more about it, but I actually haven't seen the series. My friend Dyer51 would be rather disappointed since he's actually quite a bit of a fan of it. But the game itself has you pick from 3 pilots, Shin Kazama, Mickey Simon, and Greg Gates. Greg is definitely the best one, but you can just go with that as you will. He's able to take the most punishment.
Something we should bring up real quick, just as a side thing. This game actually does have a health bar. And that's kind of weird for a Japanese shmup, because that's something you see in a more European-style game.
Right, but it is a Capcom game, so it's kind of like the 1942 series, in that it has although this one is a side-scrolling shooter, but it also has kind of like the power-up system, like the point, you add points to your different weapon systems and stuff, kind of like 1942, 1943, those games. And it has a health bar, like you said.
Yeah, how the health bar works, though, is that if you get hit, you are actually vulnerable to instantly dying for the next hit, but you have to avoid fire for a few seconds before your shields get back up. But there will come a point where your life bar gets so bottomed out that they won't ever recover unless you find some sort of life-replenishing object on the battlefield. And it has a fairly interesting, somewhat loose mission structure where you have several missions at a time, and you're allowed to pick which ones you want to tackle first, so whether it's enemies advancing on you or like their bases that you need to destroy. It's a pretty innovative game overall. The biggest catch is that you're able to purchase your own sub-weapons and even entirely new planes that have like different speeds, more powerful guns, and all that.
It's the Super Nintendo version, right?
Yes.
They both have the purchasing mechanics, because I think that was, oddly enough, part of the anime or manga.
They're basically
pilots for hire or something.
Yeah, mercenaries, more or less. I'm trying to think in the arcade version
on the series or not series, but on the conversion aspects of it on US Gamer, by the way, by Mr. Jeremy Parrish, another friend of the show. So, although he probably doesn't listen to the show,
I trust Jeremy. He's one of the few game journalists I follow to the edge of the apocalypse.
The rest of them are just all totally corrupt.
Hey, let's not get all you know who's it's what's it's. I'm not. Does not represent the views of blah blah blah.
The interesting thing about the Super Nintendo version, the reason why I like it is that I think everybody starts out with the same plane. Which is different than the arcade, than the coin-op version. Yeah.
The arcade one didn't allow you to actually purchase planes. They were linked to the 3 specific pilots, but not only can you actually purchase new fighter jets, there's twice as many of them as there were in the arcade. And there's a super ultimate one that you have to grind up cash for and not get anything else for a while to actually get. Or, you can just get the next new plane as it comes out. As readily available.
Yeah, it's it was a very good, very odd Super Nintendo conversion, because the coin-op came out in, I think, 89, and then the Super NES one didn't come out until quite a few years later, 2 or 3 years later. So it was kind of odd because it wasn't a big hit in the arcade as far as I can tell. So it's just kind of why they chose to do it. But, one thing I like about it before we get on to the ranking part is that because it was based on an anime, all the characters, even the shopkeeper character and stuff, have a really cool, they didn't change the graphics, they just changed the names. So they've got very unique, kind of cartoonish character art. So even like I said, the shopkeeper guy looks kind of unique because he's probably a character from the show.
Yeah, Commander Saki, I believe. Yeah. I think the merchant has a name too, but I forget which.
This also is another. It's kind of like the 1943 angle where you're a small plane for some reason that fights really huge planes that are completely out of scale.
Yeah, there's some really neat bosses as well, like gigantic battle tanks, submarines, and entire fortress at some point, the stealth bomber, the final boss.
You fight a B-2 bomber that's the size of
yeah, exactly.
It's the size of a baseball diamond. It's just absolutely gigantic.
And the final boss doesn't fit in the screen all at once. It's not like the infamous warship from R-Type. But, there is just a lot of variety in this game. It's one of, I'd say, Capcom's best ever on the SNES. And the music also has a distinctly sort of proto-Mega Man X feel to it, I think. It's rad, upbeat hard rock and all that.
Yeah, it's got to have a lot of wailing guitar solos, right?
Maybe not exactly that far, but it's still pretty energetic.
It should. It's anytime you jump into a fighter plane, should just be some dude wailing in the background on a Telecaster or something. So it is time to rank this one.
There's one more thing I'd like to say.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
I really like the way the game handles progression, because you're not just going from stage to stage. Everything's one big war on a map, and as you play, things move around and get closer to your base that you have to defend. And that's a really neat idea. Kind of a... I want to say maybe Star Fox 2-esque. I'm sure other games have done that.
Yeah, which means it goes back to the old Star Trek basic game. Defending bases. If you go off far, then you're leaving your base vulnerable and you have to go back and save everybody. And
I just thought it's a really neat feature.
It is a cool feature, yeah. And since we never got Star Fox 2, all the better. So to rank this game, I think we'll start, let's see, right now in the middle of the list. Like I said, you can check out the list at bit.ly/47k games. And right now in the middle of the list, I think, is Technocop for the Genesis.
Yeah, it's exactly at number 10.
Which we, way back in October 2014 is when we added that one to the list. So you can see how long this format idea has been brewing.
If I had time
is it better or worse than Technocop?
Better.
I agree.
Better, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Technocop has
think about that one.
The cool sound effects, like bastard, like that.
Then again, in UN Squad, you don't shoot anybody so hard, they just explode, so...
That's true.
Well, their planes do, that's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's not the same as exploding like Viscera. Like, the Viscera explosion factor, I think, is something that we have to... But I agree. Like, I think that in terms of, like, if I were going by the... I don't know, like... I'm going by the, 7-hour plane trip rule, where I was about to get on a plane and I was going to stay on it for 7 hours. Which game would I want to be playing between the two? I think it's easy, UN Squadron, right? Mm. Anybody else agree, disagree?
I don't think anyone's going to disagree.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go. Let's go halfway up the top half. Better or worse than G.I. Joe for NES?
Oh, I really do like G.I. Joe, but I think I still have to rate... Yeah, I think I still have to rate UN Squadron even higher. It's a relatively more advanced game, I almost want to say. I'm going to actually slide it in between Super Mario Land and Snatcher, if I may.
Really? Yeah, better than Snatcher, huh?
Oh, Snatcher is a really fantastic experience, but... game-wise, as far as the actual content of it is concerned, I won't necessarily say UN Squadron is a meatier game, but I think it just provides a lot more to go back to, and I just have a bias towards shoot-em-ups. I'll say that now, so I'll probably rank a lot of them fairly high.
But in terms of like innovation and stuff, what would you say? Like, is it really just like a polished iteration on an existing genre, or is it something, or is Snatcher really nothing special? Like in terms of like its own genre? Really, is it? What?
Yeah.
Say that again clearly, Cal, so the audience can hear it.
Snatcher's not really much of a game, is it? You just exhaust your options and then you go forward.
Well, it has those shooting gallery bits. That's technically a game.
Oh yeah, that almost is a knock against it, though.
Yeah, if you want to compare those shooting gallery bits to UN Squadron, I mean, you're not gonna.
No,
but this ain't gonna go your way.
Let's put it this way, then. Let's put it this way, because I think this is an interesting debate. But how about this? Like, based on what Snatcher was trying to do and what UN Squadron was trying to do, those are two different goals, right? Like, is UN Squadron better at being a shoot 'em up of its era than Snatcher was at being a visual novel or adventure game of its era?
They're right next to each other in that specific regard. That's UN Squadron's one. But we have to
objectively and scientifically rank them.
I would edge UN Squadron a little further because it's so innovative for the shmup genre. It has a lot of ideas you didn't see a lot back then.
I'm going to actually say this in favor of UN Squadron. I mean, I do love Snatcher. I think it's a really well-told and atmospheric game, except that it does have a very obligatory plot dump at the end, which takes almost forever to explain everything, which was kind of the makings of Hideo Kojima's storytelling style back then for everything to come out of the climax, and it's a little long in the tooth. I'm sorry to say that. I remember they had to not avoid putting in the third and final act, which is 5 minutes of gameplay and then 30 minutes of denouement. So. That didn't come till the Sega CD version later, but...
we are very anti-denouement on the show, so... right, that's it. So officially, as of today, and at least for the time being, it is the fourth best game that we've ranked so far. It's right underneath Super Mario Land, right above Snatcher. So our next game we're going to consider is nominated by Mneko, Mneko on Twitter, and Mneko nominated Galaga, the coin-op, the arcade, the original, the classic, the original ripoff, right? So, I mean, we've all played Galaga. We all know Galaga. Everybody knows Galaga.
It's probably one of the very few arcade machines you'd still see randomly. I often see him actually in a tandem arcade cabinet with Ms. Pac-Man also.
Yeah. We'll have to get this off the table right away because everybody knows Galaga is, it's a Space Invaders clone. It's like an iteration on Space Invaders. We could hold that against it or we could not. I guess what I would say about Galaga is the best game of that fixed shooter genre, in my opinion. And you may disagree with me on that.
I'd be more likely to go back to it than Space Invaders, honestly. Nothing against Space Invaders, but
right.
It's
Space Invaders are
old.
There's like a big amount of like little arcade games on the side that might be better, but it's definitely like the most prolific and well regarded as like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's another one? What's that? What was that one that had like it was like the stages of a rocket that you could you kind of had like these different.
Yeah, well,
you know what I'm talking about? It's like a different
Gorf.
It's not Gorf. Anyway,
I can. They all blend into each other. I can't remember.
There's so many of these, but the ones that people actually remember besides Space Invaders are, I think, Galaxian, which was the immediate predecessor to Galaga, which is much more. It was a lot more to Space Invaders, and Galaga, I think, is the other one. I mean, those are the ones that people actually really truly remember, and I guess Gapless to a degree, but I don't know. I mean, I just feel like the thing about Galaga that we have to talk about is that it had the bonus stages. I don't think any one of those fixed shooters before it did that, to my knowledge.
Yeah, there weren't in Galaxian.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, they weren't. They were not. Sorry.
Yeah, there may have been a fixed shooter that had bonus stages prior to this, but I don't know of it, and it doesn't really matter because it hasn't been nominated yet. So, but on top of the bonus stages, much more importantly, of course, is the ability to have one of your ships get captured by one of the enemies with a tractor beam, and then you shoot that enemy and catch your used up ship, and then you can have the double beam.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, but I like how there's like a trade-off that you're basically having like two of your lives at risk at once.
You're sacrificing a life, and you're also making yourself a bigger target. Now, granted, when one part of you gets destroyed, then the other part remains, but still, it's like kind of like the Arkanoid concept. Well, no, it's not like Arkanoid at all.
You really think it's interesting because you've got one of the first video game power-ups that is actually more of a side upgrade.
Yeah, it's kind of like an Easter egg, but it becomes a crucial part of the game at higher level play. Like the people who have records do it starting with this. It makes the bonus stages much easier, for one thing.
Yeah, back then you had to work for your power-ups. You couldn't just, shoot some sort of pod-like enemy and grab a glowing object. You had to put yourself in danger.
I mean, and also one thing that I like about it that other, even, much later games didn't do is I like the way that the power-up is kind of like, what do you say, diegetic? No, that's not the right word, but it's more like it's a part of it makes sense. It's not like they're just dropping like a glowing thing that's like power up, and you like a Gradius thing, or not a Gradius.
Well, it's got a tangible presence in the game,
right? Yeah, it's something that I don't know how much that really adds, but it feels like because you have to sacrifice a ship, and then then that enemy that has the ship goes back up, and then you have to shoot them down again. It just feels like you've done something kind of. It makes the game feel weirdly more, not realistic, but more like you have. It feels weirdly logical, I guess, in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you actually have to shoot them while they're moving. If you do it while they're still, you don't get it back. I forget how that worked exactly.
Yeah, you can't. I think you can't shoot it while there's still, or else you'll just destroy it, right?
Yeah, that's rough. It's gotta learn the hard way, the right method, and how much you can get out of it.
I think did the arcade machine actually tell you, like, on the marquee or anything? I'm not.
It probably did.
Is there anything else that we've got about Galaga specifically?
No, I don't know. I think it's time to rank it. I mean, all we know is that Tony Stark recognized it, right, in the Avengers. That man is playing Galaga, and he had already done the double ship thing. So
I am really looking forward to Civil War.
That was an ad-lib, by the way. That was an ad-lib. That was RDJ right off the dome. And then they filmed an extra scene showing somebody actually playing Galaga.
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
So, okay, there's no question Galaga better than Technocop. No question it's better than Donkey Kong Country 3, G.I. Joe, Snatcher. It's really, we're talking about Toe Jam and Earl, Kicks, and Super Mario Land. I mean...
Even better than UN Squadron?
Yes, I would say so. I would say so. Just in terms of what... I mean, okay, obviously...
Well, Galaga as a game is like, these old arcade games. It's one of the purest sort of games that can physically exist.
Now, I've got like a counterpoint right here.
Go ahead.
Galaga's a good game. I'm not going to deny that. But how much are we ranking it by its gameplay and not by its
legacy?
Value? Yeah.
I mean, we have to kind of get this out of the way early because the truth is a lot of these games are not going to compare to a game that costs like $100 million to make and runs on modern computers like that cost $3,000.
No, I'd play Galaga more readily than the latest Call of Duty, I'll tell you that.
I do play a lot of Galaga. Yeah, I got to admit, like, when I come... But, I mean, I'll say this. Like, I've got on the Namco Museum game for the DS, I think. It has which is a great collection, by the way. If you don't have it, it's probably dirt cheap right now. And it's although the resolution thing is kind of an issue because the screen sizes aren't the same as the DS screen, but it works really well, and it's a lot of fun to play Galaga on that. Yeah, I mean, but you could even say, like, in hindsight, like, people make games that are like Galaga but better, like Cosmic Gate in the Retro Game Challenge.
Yeah,
that I think is. Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's better than Galaga.
What about all the remakes they've done of Galaga, though? Because I know there's several.
Yeah, there's like, Galaga 88 for PC Engine. I have that one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really... I guess because it was just Galaga that was nominated, we don't have to really think too hard about, like, whether any of those are better than it. But I feel like we do have to factor in, like, historicity of these games, like, and how well they succeeded on their own terms. But that said, like, it's a close call for me between Kicks and Galaga.
I'm going to rate Galaga higher than Kicks, to be honest. I do really like Kicks, but...
I can't do that.
I really suck at Kicks. Galaga I can actually give a fighting chance.
I'm going to rate Kicks higher just for originality.
Okay.
I've always found Kicks to be a little bit not quite as fun. Like, just purely it's... I don't really care for it as much. Just like chopping out blocks of things, I always found that it kind of didn't quite gel the way I thought it would as a game.
Okay.
So I would probably put Galaga. I would rather play Galaga for 5 minutes.
All right, we're gonna have to flip a coin.
Wait. No, isn't it 3-1?
No, I'm sorry. I thought. So
yeah, it's 3-1. Sorry, Bob's the dissenting vote in this case.
Okay. So everybody thinks Kicks is. Everybody thinks Galaga is better than Kicks, except for me.
Oh,
wait.
What?
No, I said
so
I have
it's
to
like
put Galaga.
2-2.
Yeah, I think so. Because I said Kicks is better.
Oh,
so it is 2-2.
And Bob said Kicks is better.
Whoops!
You might have to flip a coin. I will do
Yeah,
this.
let's flip a coin. That's the best way to do it.
Just a second. Yeah.
I'm really bad at...
Reminder, just because this is going to be decided randomly does not mean it's any less scientifically and definitively accurate. Okay.
Well, if Quicks is the better game, it'll win the coin toss. That's literally how it works.
All right. Coin is working. It is perfectly weighted and scientifically accurate quarter. All right.
Can we get a photo of that coin?
You know what? I will give you. We'll get a 3D scan of it so you can confirm that it's exactly the right dimensions.
I think that's the only
fair way. You should buy it too, because that's what people do, right?
What was it? Had everybody seen that show Going Deep with David Reese, where he did like a whole episode on the optimal way to flip a coin?
Darn, I haven't. I'm afraid.
It is my favorite show on TV, and that is one of the best episodes. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to
set up
say
the coin, and then someone else can call
heads
the tails.
Heads is...
No, you can't do that. It's got to be someone else, because you got the coin. Someone else has to call.
Okay, that's true. That's true. Somebody else. Which is heads?
Quicks. Quicks is heads.
All right.
Okay, so Quicks is heads. All right. Here we go.
All right.
I'm just going to let it fall. All right. So there's no manipulation.
We could hear that. Like, we could hear it.
It's up tails.
So that puts Galaga on top then, right?
That puts Galaga on top.
Yeah, all right.
All right. I stand corrected.
Okey-dokers.
I'm completely wrong. Galaga is better than Kicks.
All right.
This is rigged. I demand a recount.
There's no recount.
Bob, if you didn't bet money, don't worry about it. It's all for ceremony.
All right, great. So our next game is going to be Wario Land 4. It was nominated by Kanedzo on Twitter. That's Kanedzo. Thank you for nominating this game. Let's talk about it. So, I mean, the main thing I know about Wario Land 4 is that, like its predecessors, Wario Land 2 and 3 for the Game Boy Color, this was kind of a adventure puzzle platformer kind of hybrid. It had like the same thing where different stuff that happened to Wario would change his attributes or properties or something like, it would allow him to do different things. But as I recall, the game also added back a life bar, which meant that each stage you were trying to find different items so you could finish the stage. But if you lost all your life, you'd have to start over. But I think you guys probably know more about this game than I do.
I am very familiar with it. I have not finished it, but I do like it a lot. And to be honest, I do like it more than Wario Land 2 and 3, which aren't bad games. I just kind of like the more somewhat traditional way 4 is.
And I have beaten it at least twice over, and I'll have to agree, not only is it a very fine sort of action-adventure game, but it was also a very early Game Boy Advance game. Like, I want to say it was in the first year of releases, and it was definitely one of the best showcases of what the GBA could do for its time.
It is probably one of the best GBA games ever made.
It is a lot brighter than Castlevania Circle of the Moon, but I guess that's not hard to do. And let me see. The premise, basically, of every level had you trying to find this floating keybird. And once you found it, and then you'd hit this switch to open the level back up, but then you're given a timer, and then you have to run back to the exit before it expires, and it's all really pressury, and there's this really cool music playing as you're going back.
That music always scared me.
It's meant to. It's very pressuring. Everything's all crumbling around as you have to get back to the portal. It gets to be a very intense game, actually. In later levels. Speaking of levels, though, it also has a very free-form approach where there are 4 hubs that you can go to, each with 4 levels within them, and you can pick whatever order you wanted. Although I think it was recommended usually that you start with the green one first, but I'm not totally sure. It's pretty free-form.
Green is when it starts the beach puzzle, right?
Yes. It seems like the natural starting point, but you could get to it last if you wanted.
I want to say there were, I thought I heard that the world's supposed to be organized by how they work. One's more about puzzles, one's more about platforming. I could be wrong, but I could have sworn I heard that somewhere.
Oh, well, that would make sense.
This sounds like an R&D 1 type thing to do. They made, of course, they made the Wario Land series.
Yes.
So they're kind of like a. Yeah, there's a really good, I think, episode of Retronauts about Wario Land as a series that it kind of explains a little bit about their R&D1's kind of development philosophy as we can, divine it from their work. But I mean, how much does this game still has like I'm right about that, right? It still has the weird like status effect gameplay where you're like enemies will do something to Wario and then they'll change him in at least temporarily into something that can. I mean that's a huge part of Wario Land 3, but it's definitely still in. I'm observing a video where he gets stung in the face by a bee, and then his head becomes all puffy, and then he floats upward and reaches places he can't before as a result. It's logical. Yeah.
It's still present. I think it's a little bit toned down compared to Wario Land 2 and 3 because the game has, I think, a bit more of an action focus overall, but that element's still definitely there, and how they have so many sprites for Wario that depict him undergoing all this torture.
My favorite one of those is just when we just get set on fire. She can run through certain blocks.
Oh yeah, that's a status effect too.
Crumbles into ash, but that doesn't.
And then reconstitute somehow. Yeah.
I always kind of appreciate how the Wario games are so experimental compared to your mainline Mario titles.
Yeah, I agree.
It seemed like Wario was kind of their dumping ground for weird ideas.
It was. I mean, I'll say this about the Wario Land series as a whole. I think this is probably a good representation of it. But it's a great to play a game, and it's still rare to play a game where you have to hurt your character in new ways to figure out how to solve puzzles. Like you're like, I can't get from. There's something in this room I can't get to it. I just better get hurt by this enemy. This is a new enemy. I wonder what happens if I get hurt by it. And it it's totally different. It's totally backwards. It's the exact opposite of the standard platformer logic. But one more thing before we try to rank this. I mean, does adding back the life bar and like a little bit of a challenge, does that improve the game, or does it make it different, or does it, in the context of the Wario Land series?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a better or worse thing to do, but I think it adds a little bit more of a sense of urgency, sense of danger, and it requires you to be more aware of what you need in every level. Because as I remember, like, not only do you need to find the key, but you also need to find a jewel that'll open the boss door. If you miss that jewel, you gotta go through the level again, but then you have to manage that with your life bar, and it can get pretty challenging in later levels, but, unless you, keep missing a jewel, 10 times over, I don't think it ever gets boring either. It's just, the game's very colorful and well animated, and you can also see some of the makings in its design that it would eventually go into the very, very famed WarioWare series that began in 2003.
Okay, so let's rank it. Better or worse than Technocop?
We always have to start on Technocop.
Really?
Everyone is going to know what Technocop is just because of us.
We'll find something worse
as long
eventually.
As it's in the middle. Sooner or later, it's it's probably, I think right now, because the ones we added, Uniracers is actually in the middle. Uniracers are Marvel Land. So is it better than those?
I'm going to say yes.
I don't think you're going to find much argument there. Better than Donkey Kong Country 3.
I'm once again going to say yes because DKC3 was not as good as 1, 2, in my opinion. I still think it's an alright game, though, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I wish I could remember when we ranked that one. It was like all I see in the episode field is question marks. So I think we tried to record something and then lost the recording. So I can't remember what our rationale was.
Audio, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Okay, yeah.
The games are better than Galaga.
Yeah.
So that would put it pretty high.
You know what? I'm even going to place it just beneath Toe Jam and Earl. Is it better than Toe Jam and Earl, though? That's the question.
That is a good question.
That's actually tricky.
Ooh.
Right now, keep in mind, right now, Toe Jam and Earl's above Kix, Galaga, Super Mario Land, and UN Squadron. Seems like there's a big gulf between Super Mario Land and UN Squadron. But
well, I know Kyle hasn't had much to say about this game, but you want to weigh in?
Well, ToeJam and Earl is like fantastically clever and interesting compared to Wario, which is a further refined game of just the Wario's line of platform games. So it really is a question of whether you think that a very good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's a weird place to put us in because Wario Land 3, for instance, is not on the list yet. So Wario Land 3 and ToeJam and Earl, I think, would be a closer call. Wario Land 4, I feel like, although it may be better than Wario Land 3, it's not quite. It's hard to say.
In my opinion, like if I was to if you would be like, hey, you want to play ToeJam and Earl, or would you recommend someone play Wario? I'd be like, well, probably ToeJam and Earl because it's really weird and fun.
Mm.
I am actually going to agree with this. I think Wario Land 4 is a bit more of a solid and accessible game, but ToeJam and Earl is definitely a more creative one, and it's made me very fearful of giant ice cream trucks. So, it's got that going for it.
Okay, so Wario Land 4 and Galaga. Who wins there?
Well, now this is...
Let's think of it this way. Like, in your entire life, okay, are you going to play Wario Land 4 again?
Yeah.
Before you play Galaga again?
Okay, maybe not.
Let's try this one. This is a totally scientific, accurate, 100% legit and objective ranking mechanism, just like the coin flip. Perhaps even more so than the coin flip, if that's possible.
Oh my, hot take.
How about this? Like, for Galaga and Wario Land 4, let's think about it this way. Like, what if you could only pick one of these games to ever play again, and the other one you could never play again?
In that case, I would still go with Wario Land 4 because there's so many games similar to Galaga.
And there's not games that are similar to Wario Land.
That's a good. There are other Wario Land games, but there aren't. That's a total of 4.
Yeah.
Really 3 because Wario Land 1 is not.
Wario Land Shake is very similar.
Yeah, but it's not really. I mean, it's a rarefied universe that Wario Land 4 or Wario Land series occupies because there just really is nothing but Wario Land games in it. It's kind of a genre to itself.
As platformers, it is kind of a smaller subcategory.
Right. So with Galaga
was kind of, as we said, it has been superseded by exact clones of Galaga.
That's true. You could say, well, I'll never play Galaga again. I'll play Wario Land 4 again. But then you've also got like Galaga 88, Gapless, other things that you could play in its place. Whereas,
it's a tiebreaker scenario.
I think you guys have convinced me. I was going to put Galaga above it, but I think you made a strong case for Wario Land 4. Does anybody disagree?
No, I'm going to concede to Wario Land 4. I think not to. I hate to use this argument because it really makes me look like a punk, but there are some cases where a game being old can work against it.
Yeah, against it, right,
I hate to say that about Galaga. It's still very playable. It still holds up a lot better, I'd say, than many of its contemporaries. But there's not a lot to it. Also,
what's Galaga is that it is really just a very good version of a huge genre of kind of Me Too games. Like a huge genre of Space Invaders clones. Like we don't even have like Xevious on the list or anything like that to really look at the evolution of this genre. And so that's why, and I think I like this test of like which one would you play if you could only play that one again.
Yeah,
and choosing it would disqualify the other one forever. So
let's jam it in the list then, I guess.
All right, so right now,
every
of the game we've ranked so far, Wario Land 4, second best game.
Very good
after ToeJam and Earl. Right above Galaga and Kix in Super Mario Land. All right.
Just one more point before we end. Every shmup is basically Space Invaders, Xevious, or Gradius. So
yeah, but and that is a good point. That one of the issues with this list is like whatever gets nominated first, there's going to be a bias in its favor. Like right now, like if somebody were next week to nominate Wario Land 2 how do we deal with that?
Ooh.
You know.
Well, I guess
we're infallible, so it's no question. Like, we just deal with it as if there was no issue whatsoever. But
yeah, we'll pole vault over that bridge when we come to it.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the benefit of being unquestionable and unimpeachable authority on the matter, as we are. We don't have to answer for our actions or decisions.
Yeah, we are the very model.
It's for you, the listener, to deal with it.
Okay.
Take that, fans.
Great. We're doing the 90s play it loud advertising against everyone already.
All right. So the last game we're going to talk about for this episode is Amagon, which was nominated. Amagon is an NES game, by the way, which was nominated by Steven Eider on Twitter. That's StevenEidher, longtime fan, longtime follower. We love you, Steven. So, but you nominated Amagon, which we do. I mean, how many of it? We'll start with the obvious question. How many of us here have played Amagon?
I have, and I regret it.
I grew up playing it. It is. I kind of want to burst and.
Grandma buy you Amagon.
Scream. Well, my brother actually got it.
Computer game. I got you this one, which is about a boy who grows up to be a bigger boy.
That's pretty much it. No, actually,
hire you to greater greatness.
I can front a little bit. Back when video rental stores were a thing, where you got VHS tapes and video games for rental. Some of them, I remember there was one next town over called Corner Video that used to exist that actually sold NES games. That I guess they were just taking off rental, and anyone who wanted it, get it for cheap. So my brother, I think, even before I was born, actually bought some of these the way they were, and didn't exactly know what he was getting. Some of them were damn good, some of them were total turds. Like this one, Amagon, which is really too tough for its own good.
Cal, you've been noticeably silent. How have you avoided the scourge that is Amagon?
Yeah, I actually, you guys are like, I hate Amagon. I'm like, I have no idea what Amagon is. Yeah, because I didn't have an NES because they didn't take off in Australia nearly as much.
Oh my.
I never had an actual NES either, so my experience just from loading up random ROMs when I figured out how to emulate things.
That you own legally, right?
Oh, of course.
Wink.
Bob buys everything overpriced online off eBay. That's what it does.
Gives exactly as much money to the publishers as it would to just take the ROM and play it.
When is this
I get a lot of letters from publishers because I just send them wallets of money. Like, I've been playing your games, guys. Just take the money, and they get
Dear
really
Culture
angry at me.
Brain, I feel like I owe you something.
It was American Sammy, I believe, that made it.
Yes, right.
Oh yeah, the really fantastic Sammy who did stuff and stuff.
Anymore, but
Guilty Gear?
Whatever holding company,
or they publish it.
Oh yeah, they did at least publish it. I think they were very a hands-off company for the most part. The only game worth a damn I can remember them ever making was Zombie Raid.
Let's go back to something here. But
sorry.
Cal said he never owned an NES, and I'm curious why that is. Is in the late
I know you want to know about this because in Australia, if you're not Australian, you're probably not completely aware. Basically, the NES got a very late release date here, and also had really crappy advertising. You can find that ad online where it's just the 3D CGI creatures screaming, "You can't defeat us," or whatever. Like, it's absolutely nightmarish.
Oy.
I wouldn't describe the NES as a flop because it was, console. It sold copies. But it came out in, I thought, like 85, 86, like quite late.
Well, no, that can't be right because it came out in 85, 86 in the United States.
Was it in the United States?
Yeah.
It's much later on, sorry. What I do know is you can have a look. It came out later than the US, as you would expect, but the Master System came out kind of sooner than it did compared to the NES, in the sense that basically you could have the NES and then a year or two later, I believe, the Master System was already out. So it did not have this same grace period that it did in the US. So why would we get the NES? The Master System is way better. So
that's the same case for Brazil too, I believe.
Yeah, and so in Australia and Brazil, Sega had a very strong hold on the market into the 90s because they really supported Australia. Then we got completely screwed over with the Saturn, where we got like 3 games, I think, and they were all Sega Rally. So that's a whole other story.
I mean, but you wouldn't say that the Master System in Australia kind of supplanted the NES. It wasn't like the equivalent of NES levels of market share. It was
more of a direct competitor to the NES than it was in the US.
So it's kind of like the Super Nintendo versus Genesis in the 90s in North America then, whereas like they were both pretty popular, but neither one really could dominated the other one.
We had so much other stuff here because like Euro PCs were popular in Australia as well compared to the US.
Microcomputers,
ZX you had all these microcomputers. I've seen Commodore 64s and stuff all over the place in Australia for sale every so often. My uncle had an Amiga. Like lots of.
Did the MSX grab any market share in Australia?
I don't believe so. I don't know if I've seen.
It could have because it's so close to Japan.
Yeah, so because we had, all this stuff, the NES was not, a standout, and there was no, We also didn't really experience as much of a crash, so that, again, basically we just had so many consoles to choose from, and they all came out later than they should have. So by the time we caught up, Sega was like, here's the Mega Drive, and that was it. Every cool kid had a Mega Drive, every idiot had an SNES, because you weren't cool if you had an SNES in Australia. I mean, look, that's just the way it was.
Basically, it sounds like the 8-bit era just kind of passed through very quickly before the 16-bit era happened.
Yeah, because we were tailing and then we kind of caught up, basically. I know what you guys are doing. You're trying to avoid talking about this horrible game that you have to talk about.
Well, no, honestly, I want to talk about it. I want to explode and scream about how this...
I think we're trying to stop you from exploding.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Game Amagon is.
I'll try and read it.
Is a part of the... it's an auto-scroller, right?
It's really crappy Contra, almost. Yeah, it's I guess you could call it a run and gun. You have a gun.
Is it a run and gun or is it an auto-scroller?
No. It doesn't auto-scroll. You go at your own pace.
Oh, okay.
But
that shows you how much of an impression it made on me.
No, that's all right. I think the premise of the game is that you're some sort of soldier who looks like a newspaper comics character. You are downed. You have a downed plane on an archipelago, and you have to fight your way through the wildlife in order to reach this boat that's on all the other way of the other side of the island.
You get to punch some hippos?
Yeah, you can do that if you get that far.
Is this the game that had the cover that was like some kid growing into some hulking beast?
Yes, the cover was the best part. I'll admit that was actually pretty rad.
How was a kid flying a plane that got downed over an archipelago?
I don't know.
Was flying the plane, or is he a survivor?
I want to say that the kid is actually a soldier, if that's what it said in the manual. Here, let me drum up the manual quick. No, it says actually in the story, Amagon is the most decorated Marine. Yeah, Amagon is the name of your character. I don't know what the word itself means. Must be some romanization for something like courage.
It's Amazon, but
okay,
you can't say Amazon because those are women.
All right.
Let's call him Amagon.
But he's the most decorated Marine, and he looks like Little Orphan Annie's twin brother.
You know what it reminds me of is Captain Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
Billy Batson is like a kind-hearted orphan boy who nobody likes, and then he says the magic word Shazam and turns into Captain Marvel, where he's like a dude with huge muscles, but he still has the mind of like an 8-year-old boy.
Oh, yeah, Captain Marvel outsold Superman for a while because he was a lot more innovative.
Very long time. But eventually the guy who I think is the writer of Captain Marvel went to work on Superman and sold a bunch of Superman comics.
Well, that makes sense.
I think.
But Amagon, in order to grow big, he doesn't say a magic word. He gets some sort of icon, which hulks him out into some sort of a Choaniki-like
child soldier
life. I don't know. Maybe he has like some sort of genetic disorder where he's like, really 30, but he looks like he's 12. And yet, he has a gun. Its ammo is limited, though. If you run out, you just have to resort to beating animals with your gun. Oh, geez, that sounds very PETA unfriendly, but
shooting them would be like how much more humane.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, if you see the deer hunter, just one shot is what you want to go for. But Jesus, I'm just all over the place here.
Happier and happier.
Yeah, Amagon.
Seen the deer hunter.
I would rather
yourself.
I would rather
watch the Deer Hunter.
The Deer Hunter is a fantastic film. It's a very depressing
movie
one.
That I did, I wouldn't say I contemplated suicide. Is more like I just saw the attraction. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't make me want to kill myself. I'm like, oh, I see why people kill themselves now.
So the Deer Hunter is more calming than Amagon in that regard, because this game is just so frustrating. It's one of those, like Contra, one hit will kill you, and everything will kill you. The first stage alone has, like, these birds and tree-dwelling, bat-looking thingies that... The birds especially, they'll just swoop down almost like bats from Castlevania and just kill you in a snap if you can't hit them.
So it's like an overhead running gun like Ikari Warriors.
Oh, no, it's a side-scrolling one like Contra.
It's a side-scroll. Man, I can't say anything about this game because I am completely different.
No, I can tell you all about this. I could also link you to a video if you want to.
That's okay. I'd rather just be silent and ignorant.
Well, what else can I say about this one? I believe its continues were limited. I had to resort to using a Game Genie to actually get to the end of it. I don't know why I took the effort for it. Your lives are limited. The game is very relentless. Enemies just, bag in from the edges of the screen mercilessly. Like, these pterodactyls drop armadillos on you, and then they swoop down afterward. It almost sounds like an awesome game on paper because you get assaulted by all this exotic wildlife like lions and hippos. One level gets kind of Paleolithic with dinosaurs and all that. And I think the final boss is actually the Flatwoods alien, which, that large-eyed, floaty, triangle-headed thingy. But I don't know. I almost want to like the game more because it's at least very fast, kind of jaunty and upbeat, but it's just so murderous.
It's very colorful, yeah.
It really makes Contra looks like a merry run around the mulberry fields. It's just I grew up trying to play this, and
it's one of those. You're right. It is mostly about like shooting animals and
dying.
It looks like he's wearing like one of those like 1920s strongmen unitards.
Yeah.
Well, I like that he's shooting almost pink bullets. Like, I love that that's the color they chose.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah.
Man, these elephants in level 2. That's a hell of a character.
Okay, so I think we've dignified this game with more of a discussion than it's actually worth.
I would at least say I would at least like to say that the sort of strongman changing dynamic of how you can actually take damage now, but like your range
like a Super Mario thing, like a mushroom that gives you one extra.
Yeah, exactly. Although, like, your projectile attack now takes a little bit of your life, so you should probably mostly stick to punching until you, reach the boss.
A terrible thing.
Yeah, that sucks a lot. And bosses...
It's a shooting game that... in what universe does that make sense? Like, this is a run-and-gun game, but if you shoot your weapon, you decrease your health.
Well, okay, that's only if you're the strong man. If you're a regular Amagon, you just run out of bullets.
When you get the strongman thing, he just goes totally George of the Jungle, too. The unitard turns into a Speedo. And is high stepping it the whole way. He's got
I gotta ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did Amagon come out before or after Altered Beast? Because the whole muscling up things and it's very altered.
I think it was after. Pretty sure.
The most damning thing you can say about Amagon is, I'm kind of, my memory's coming back on this one. Altered Beast is far and away makes this game look like garbage.
I would play Altered Beast like a dozen times over before I ever touch Amagon again. Seriously.
Yeah, seriously.
Speaking of Amagon, we need to rank Amagon before we go way over.
I'm ready to slam this bastard down.
I think after we've ranked Amagon, nobody has to discuss or refer to or think about Amagon ever again. So, Technocop, better or worse?
Lower.
Worse, right?
Yeah.
I think like eSWAT, Nightshade.
I'm going to place it just below 8 Eyes, personally.
Yeah, it is. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball, Eek the Cat for the Super Nintendo.
They're off.
I would
Eek the Cat. Is Eek the Cat like a more fun visual experience? I don't know. Like,
Eek the Cat is basically a giant escort mission. That's all it is.
If it's an escort mission, it's the worst thing. At least Amagon only has you protecting you.
Okay, so it's going to go between Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball and Eek the Cat. So it is now the second worst game that we have ranked so far.
I'm not going to argue with this. I'm just surprised, Xerxes. I'm just surprised that you placed it lower than Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball because I thought you had a knife.
Basketball at least has the fun of saying the words Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball.
Point, yeah, at least.
Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball makes me laugh.
I mean, when is Bill Lambier ever going to get any fame points in this modern day and age?
He was basically just a guy who's famous for being an asshat. That's all he was. Like, yeah. And the game is terrible, but at least it's funny to talk about it. Whereas you say, "How about that Amagon, people?"
Whereas Amagon just angers me.
An anonymously crappy game. That's all it is.
Yep. Just play Contra instead. You won't regret it. And Super C.
Yeah,
pretty much.
That's all for this episode of the top 47,858 games of all time. Thank you for sticking with us. And to GC9X fans, thank you for jumping ship and trying something new. Special thanks goes out to Silent Fanatic, Imneko, Kenedzo, and Steven Eider on Twitter for nominating those games, including Amagon.
So I could vent if nothing else.
Yeah. And thanks to all of those of you who dominated games who we didn't get to yet. You know who we are. You know who you are, and we will be getting to your stuff soon. Don't worry, we won't leave anyone behind, and we really appreciate it. Thanks as well to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots, Satenga, Bobinator, and Cal.
Yeah, what up, yo?
It wouldn't be the same without you. It would just be me, actually. It'd be very different.
Oh, please. I don't take praise very well.
No, it's...
that's just...
And our theme song composer, Muteki, who did a cool new song, which, as of this recording, I haven't quite decided. He did a couple of them. I haven't decided which one to use, but they're all good. Thanks to Discount Bob's Discount Mattress Warehouse for... discounting those mattresses. Slightly soiled.
Less stains.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
That's because the prison doesn't want them. Doesn't mean you can't use them. And of course, thanks to the support and feedback of listeners like you, you can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HD101. You should. There's a lot of kudos that you'll get from that. I think at a $5 donation, you'll get some free HD101 books. Is that right? And there's a bunch of them now. Okay, so you can also support us by following at HG_101 on Twitter and at GC9X. GC9X is me. HG_101 is our founder and hopefully soon-to-be co-host, Kurt Collada. He's much more game-related, oddly enough, than I am. I am much more like random 1 a.m. tweets about I don't know, what was the line? I think one of my favorite tweets I've ever done, to be honest, is where I was like, you've had a bad night when you wake up and the first thing you do is Google scorpion antidote. I had a nightmare where I was like stung by like 20 scorpions, and I was like, the first thing I woke up was like, is there a cure for scorpion stings? But most importantly, you can help us claw our way into the zeitgeist by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101, the podcast, and giving us a 5-star review. Do it, or GC9X will come back.
Perfect cut, friend. I'll see
next month. Keep keeping it real.
My favorite restaurant to eat at is PDF Chang's. And there's your joke for the night. I'm sorry. I quit. Never mind. I am so gone. I'll turn my resignation. I'll turn my resignation after this recording's over.
Resignation accepted.
Yay! I'm free.
I'm trying to imagine what the decorations in a PDF Chang's would be. Like, you don't have the terracotta warriors. You'd have, like, the JPEG artifacty cat videos or something.
I mean, the space outfits would be inefficient.
You'd have, like, the Rage comic guy, like, in like, papier-mâché sculpture or something.
God, what did I create? I'm sorry.
You have to edit. You're the one who should be sorry.
Yeah, I will be.
In a way, we're all sorry.